The summons. The following day, Aunt Hesidia told the superior mother hen that she suspected someone had been illegally harvesting corn, and she was going to catch the culprit. As corn matriarch, she launched an investigation with the single-minded determination of a steel trap. She doubled the number of guard roosters on the corn patch. She also had the hens working longer shifts to do their usual weeding and to keep an eye on the roosters as well as each other. Walter was eager to help and volunteered to do double shifts and even longer. That evening, when he came home after a grueling double shift, he got to the coop and saw that everyone had gone in to roost. So he entered in on tiptoe. As he approached his nest, Chick roused and sleepily peeped. "Dad?" Walter leaned over his son and whispered, "Go back to sleep, Chick." "Well, why are you coming home so late?" asked Chick. "I had to work over," said Walter quietly. "Why?" asked Chick. "Don't you worry about that," said Walter. "Now go back to sleep. We don't want to wake your mother." Chick snuggled down in his shoe and went back to sleep. As Walter eased into the nest, he snuggled up next to June. And June drowsily woke and asked, "Any progress on the corn problem?" "Not yet," whispered Walter, "but I'm almost convinced it's not someone from the deep brush." June clucked, "Walter, if something from the deep brush is stealing corn, you could be in danger." "Oh, it's okay," Walter assured her. "I didn't find any indication of anything big like coons or possums. I've checked every row and stalk at least 100 times this last shift, looking for signs, and I found nothing." "Well, maybe no one's stealing the corn," said June hopefully. "Could it be that Auntie Hesidia is mistaken?" Walter yawned big and shook his head. "I don't know," he said. "But on the bright side, the corn patch has never looked as clean as it does now. What with me and the hens working all the rows, there's not a weed or a cobworm in sight." "Well, she's probably just doing all this for spite," said June. Walter rubbed his eyes and said, "Oh, June, don't talk like that. If Aunt Hesidia says someone is stealing corn, she could be right, and we're just missing it." Walter yawned again and said, "Can we talk about this tomorrow? I volunteered to help out for first shift." June started to protest, but she could hear that Walter was already snoring. He was so tired he had fallen asleep in the middle of their conversation. June sighed and gave him a little peck and snuggled up next to him. The following morning, when June woke, she saw that Walter was already gone. Poor Walter, his early shift turned into an all-day shift, and then that turned into an all-night shift. The following morning, Walter came dragging back to the coop. June was already up, foraging through the grass, scratching up some breakfast for her family. Walter was too tired to eat. He was even too tired to participate with the roosters atop of the stone wall to crow at the morning dawn. Oh, there she is, the love of my life, he said with weary cheerfulness. June clucked worriedly. Did you find anything? Nothing, replied Walter. Aunt Acidia thinks it may be field mice, but if it is, I can't find any sign. June shook her head and said, Walter, you shouldn't be working all these extra hours. It's not like you're getting anything for it. Walter started to reply, but June cut him off. Yes, I know. We all have to do our part, that's what you say. But Walter, you're doing your part and at least 3 other chickens' parts. Walter wearily shook his head. I know it's frustrating, June, but if on the off chance that it could be field mice, I really need to be there because I'm the only one who can understand their language. And, not many field mice can speak Chicklish. Walter was right. Not many field mice or any other creatures of the deep brush could speak the Homestead language of Chicklish, nor did they care to. They felt that if the Homestead chickens didn't bother to learn their language, why should they learn theirs? Walter was the only chicken conversant not only in field mouse, but in several other languages and dialects of the deep brush. June suspected that Aunt Acidia could have cared less about Walter's talent for interspecies communication because she, like many Gallioarchs, Aunt Acidia felt that anyone who couldn't speak proper Chicklish wasn't worth talking to. Walter stood there bleary-eyed and said, I'll be really disappointed if it is one of the field mice. Why's that? Asked June. Trying to stay awake, Walter yawned. As his head drooped down, his eyes started to close, and he mumbled, Well, because of my arrangement with them. Shocked, June clucked sharply. What kind of arrangement? Walter's eyes snapped open and he squawked. What? June balked. Walter, what kind of arrangement do you have with the field mice? Are you in some kind of trouble with them? Trying to calm June down, Walter reassuringly clucked. Oh, of course not. What kind of trouble could I possibly get into with the field mice? June didn't want to say because she didn't want to hurt Walter's feelings. She did, however, feel that Walter was just a little bit too trusting when it came to people like Aunt Acidia and field mice. It would not occur to him that people like that would have an ulterior motive. She desperately hoped that the field mice were not preying on Walter's kindly nature by talking him into stealing corn for them. Rather than raise that issue with him, she just changed the subject. Why don't you go on in and get some sleep, she said. I'll bring you some breakfast later. What would you like? Oh, just whatever you scratch up, replied Walter, yawning. Anything but grubs. The last ones I ate gave me gas. June just shook her head and chuckle-clucked. As Walter went in to the coop, Chick came out. He leaned down and nuzzled him affectionately. "You be a good boy and mind your mother," he said. "Okay, Dad," Chick replied. And when Walter went inside, Chick started to take off, but June stopped him. "Where do you think you are going, young Roo?" June asked in that stern, authoritarian, motherly tone that could have stopped a rampaging bear in his tracks. Chick replied with typical adolescent vagueness, "Nowhere, just around." June's motherly tone hardened just a bit, to where it not only would have stopped the rampaging bear, but it would also have brought him to his knees. "You're not going anywhere until you've had your breakfast." Chick tried to resist. "Mom," he groaned, "don't treat me like a baby. I'm not a hatchling anymore." June leaned back and clucked in mock amazement. "Well, excuse me, Mr. Cock-a-doodle-doo." Chick rolled his eyes. "Come on, Mom. I gotta go." "Not without breakfast," said June. Chick knew resistance was futile, so he reluctantly joined her in the grass. "Now," said June, "I have some nice wild seed, no bugs, just the way you like it. But you have to finish all your grit before you go." Chick hurriedly pecked at his food, and as he did, there was a shrill crow. It wasn't a typical rooster crow, and it definitely lacked Walter's unique crow. It went, "Roar, roar, yoo-hoo! Roar, roar, yoo-hoo!" Chick looked up, and coming towards them was an odd-looking banty rooster. He was taller than Chick, but shorter than June. He had fluffy white feathers that hung on him in such a manner that they looked more like hair than feathers. He had a thick, floppy, single purple comb that laid on the side of his head, and when he turned a certain way, it looked as if he was wearing a grape-colored beret. He had dark eyes that were trimmed with a bit of purple, which made his eyes look actually larger. He marched his woolly pear-shaped body along on short legs covered with hairy feathers that grew out even from his feet, making it look as if he was wearing downy, hairy pantaloons. He moved like a regimental officer getting ready to inspect the troops. The seriousness of his demeanor was ruined by the way his shaggy, hairy tail feathers bounced on his backside like a bustle on a Victorian lady's evening gown. It was Vance, the official scratcher of the Galliarch court. The scratcher was someone who could read and write in scratching, the written language of the Homestead. Not all chickens could read and write scratching, but for Vance it was a job requirement because he kept the minutes for the Council of Aunties meetings, maintained the official records of the Galliarch court, and he was also personal assistant to the superior mother hen and chief administrator of the Galliard court. He also did anything else that needed to be done in the Galliard court, such as delivering a summons to someone who is commanded to appear before the Council of Aunties. Vance crowed loudly as he strutted up the path. Then, abruptly stopping in front of June, he stuck out his feathered, hairy chest and asked officiously, "Are you June Pinfeather?" June replied with bemused annoyance, "Vance, you know perfectly well that I am. We've known each other since we were chicks in the yard." Vance clucked officiously, "Ah, well, just have to be sure. Now, don't I? You could be an imposter now, couldn't you?" "Who would want to impersonate me?" asked June. "Don't rightly know," said Vance, matter of fact. "That's why I have to be sure." June rolled her eyes and clicked her beak and said, "Fine. Yes, I am." "Wait!" snapped Vance, cutting her off. "Since you interrupted the process, I have to ask the question again." "Why?" asked June. "Well, to keep it official," he replied. June started to say something, but was interrupted when she felt a tug on her tail feather. She looked down, and it was Chick. "Mom," he said as he swallowed the last of his breakfast, "I'm done. Can I go now? Did you finish your grit? All gone, see?" Chick opened his beak to show his mother that this was true. "In a minute," said June. She then gave Vance a look to indicate that she was ready. "All right then," said Vance, clearing his throat. "Are you June Pinfeather?" "Yes." "Mother hen to the Pinfeather brood?" "Yes." "The mother of one chick named Chick?" "Yes." "Wife to Walter Pinfeather?" Yes, said June. "Now, what is this all about?" Standing at attention, Vance replied as if he was reciting lines from an epic poem. "You have been ordered by the Council of Aunties to appear before them and our Mother Superior Hen, Hypatia Rosecomb, to answer questions concerning irregularities of members in your brood. You are to report to the Galliard court at mid-morning 2 days hence." That would be the day after tomorrow." "I know what 2 days hence means," said June curtly. Chick tugged on June's tail feather again and asked, "Mom, what are irregularities, and how did we get so many of them?" June, sounding not too concerned, said, "I'm sure all this has something to do with that little scuffle you had with Aunt Hasidia's chick, right, Vance?" Vance replied in the same reciting tone, "As per the instructions of the official overseer of the Galliard court, Auntie Hasidia, I am to deliver the summons and not discuss the particulars of said summons forthwith." Vance leaned in and added with less pomp, "Besides, If you knew what they wanted to talk to you about, you might not show up. Annoyed, June formally clucked. Please inform the overseer and the Council of Aunties I will be there. Vance added, with your brood. June replied, as the overseer of the Council of Aunties wishes, she replied with courteous sarcasm. But please be telling the council that Walter will be working all night in the corn patch and will be very tired and not in attendance. No need to be concerned, said Vance. Walter Penfeather is suspended from duty until such time as the council has had time to deliberate on the matters of said summons. June balked. Suspended? All because of a squabble between two chicks in the yard? Isn't that a bit extreme? Like I said, replied Vance, continuing his official reciting tone, I cannot be discussing the particulars as per the instructions of the overseer of the Galiois court. Annoyed, June clucked. Well, we wouldn't want to get you on the wrong side of the overseer, now would we? Glad you understand, said Vance, oblivious to June's insult. Then he stood there looking at June expectantly. Finally, June asked, was there something else? Vance replied, 'Tis customary to tip the scratcher when he gives a summons. Here's a tip for you, said June. Don't expect tips from angry hens who have been summoned to the Council of Aunties for no good reason. Taken aback, Vance replied, well, goodness me, there's no need to be nasty. I'm just doing me job. June glared at him with an expression that not only would have stopped the aforementioned red-paging bear, but also would make him tuck his tail between his legs and run away. That look hit Vance so hard he staggered slightly and stammered, thank you, I suppose. Good day. And then he abruptly turned and left as quickly as he could, while trying his best not to look intimidated. Mom, are we in trouble? Asked Chick. Nothing I can't handle, replied June as she watched Vance strut down the path. Chick asked, are you sure? June heard the worry in Chick's voice. She shook her head and replied, I'm sure. It's nothing, really. You run along now. I'm sure you have lots of exploring to do. Now, Chick was really worried. His mother never encouraged him to go exploring. Her preference has always been for him to stay in or around the coop. Any exploring away from the coop was done only after he managed to give her a slip. Sensing Chick's confusion, June said, you said it yourself. You're not a hatchling anymore, and I shouldn't treat you like one. Why, you're old enough to explore beyond the confines of the coop yard. Besides, it's not as if you haven't done it before. How long can I stay out? Asked Chick. June thought for a minute and said, all day. Surprised, Chick said, all day? You mean all day, as in the entire day? If you want to, said June. If you get hungry and can't find anything to scratch up, come home and I'll fix you something. Otherwise, I want you to be home by dark and promise me you will stay in the homestead. No going into the deep brush. June spoke in that no-nonsense motherly tone that Chick knew better than to argue with. even though exploring the deep brush was something he always wanted to do, especially around the Grymme Creek, because he had heard that there were swimming wilderling chickens there. Chick replied, "I promise." June knew he would keep the promise, but just to make sure, she sealed it with a final admonition. "See that you do." As Chick scampered away, his worry evaporated in the light of his newfound freedom. June turned to go into the coop. She knew what was ever up with the Council of Aunties. You could bet your last kernel Aunt Hasidia was behind it, and it could not be good.